Hey guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 blueprint tutorial. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last video where we're working on the vertical saw hazard sprite here in Paper 2D. This is what we had before. We have objects that can basically collide with the player when touching, move at different play rates, animating sprites, all that good stuff. So what we're going to do next is add UMG HUD elements to these objects just to show you what we're going to be going for. Where is it? As you can see here on the spinning saw, we have a health bar, we have like a hit icon, and we have a number. And then when we touch, damage is dealt, number increases, things like that. So that's the goal. That's what we're aiming for here. So to get started, let's go ahead and import all the art that we're going to need in the end here. Let's go into our textures folder that we created. Let's add a new folder to it just to keep things organized. We'll just call this UMG HUD content, something we can recognize easily. And now let's right click, let's import. And I have two different pieces of textures here. One's going to be the hit icon, and the other one's the progress bar, so I'm going to bring them both in. And then let's go into our blueprints folder. Let's create a new folder here. We'll just call it UMG. And what UMG is, it's basically overlay HUD. It's basically a HUD where you can display information to the player. Most simplistic way I can really describe it. To get it going, what you need to do, I forget where it's under. I think it's under user interface widget blueprint. Here we go. Not too hard. We'll call UMG underscore hazard underscore HUD. Perfect. Double click on that, and now we see we're given a canvas. This is basically the player screen, whatever you want to call it, really. What I'm going to do for preview size, though, I'm going to change it to a custom. Just change it to 500 to 500, just so it's smaller, easier to manage, since we're not dealing with the whole player screen. Because we want the HUD to just be overlaid near the saw. We don't want anything like bigger than that. So to get started, what we're going to need, we'll start with the images. Let's go, I believe it's under, I'm wrong so far, common, under image. Let's just drag it, make sure it goes over canvas panel, and then let's just name it. We'll call this one hit icon. You can change it up here on the top right. And right now, default, it's white. It's no image attached to it. So let's go into our HUD content folder. Let's get our hit icon. Let's go back, and then it is right here under brush where it says image. Just chunk it on in there. And right now the size is not right, so we need to change size X and size Y. We'll do 64 by 64 for now. Leave it like that. And there's our icon. Nothing bigger than that. So now let's go ahead and do another image. Let's throw it in there. And we'll call this progress bar meter. Same idea applies. Let's go ahead and grab the other meter image and then put it in, and it's right here. And we can make this bigger as we see fit. Doesn't have to be anything specific. That looks good. Now let's add a new piece of information here. It's going to be a text. Let's do text box, I believe. We'll call this hit number. Honestly, we got it over here. I don't think text box is what we need. I'm wrong here. Let's do normal text. Throw it in a canvas. Again, we'll call it hit number. Put instead, where it says text, just put 0 for now. Place it where you want. That looks good. And maybe a little higher. Not that high. Yeah, that looks good. And the last thing we need to do here is create what they call a progress bar. So let's just throw that in. We'll name this hazard health bar. Nothing too fancy. And what we need to do, right now it's like that grayish color. In order to make it blue like this color is indicating, we just need to change from 0 to 1. It doesn't do 100% like you would think. It just goes up to 0 to 1. Don't really worry about that. It's not too big of a deal. So now we can go ahead and organize this a little bit more. I just got to take a look to see how we did this. There we go. Okay. Let's first place our health meter where we want it. You can change the size of it. You can do a lot with it. And what's the pain in the ass? Well, sorry for cursing, but what's the pain? You gotta have to like just line it up a little bit. It's not too big of a deal, but it's actually not that big of a deal. That was pretty easy. When I was originally doing it, it was kind of a pain. So it's good to see that that was pretty easy. So now what we need to do, we got it looking the way we want to look. Now we gotta give it functionality. So what we're gonna do, the two things that are gonna be interactive and what are gonna be associated to our hazard, it's going to be the progress bar and the hit number. So we'll start with the hit number. Where it says text, that's where we're going to bind a new event to it. So we're going to create a binding. And what we're going to need to do from here is create a new variable. We'll call it number of hits. Obviously, we're going to change it to an integer. Default it at 0. And then we're just going to drag it in. Obviously, we got to do a conversion. But that's really it. So now for our last binding, let's go back to the designer. Let's go to the progress bar, or hazard health bar. And right here where it says %, the 1, that's where we're going to bind a new event. And we're also going to create a new variable. We're going to call it hazard health. And it's going to be a float. By default, let's go ahead and make it 1. And then we can just drag it out and plug it right in. Now let's just make these two variables public, just in case we need to reference them. We may need to. But when it comes to the HUD, that's really it. So now what we need to do, let's go into our actual BP spinning saw underscore vertical hazard blueprint. And with the UMG we just created, have it highlighted. And then let's go add component. There's going to be one for widget. We'll just call this hazard HUD. And now, with hazard HUD selected, right here, it asks for a widget class. We can just pick up and choose UMG underscore hazard. Throw it in. Let's compile and just take a look, see if that's big enough for us. We may need to be a little bit bigger. That should do it. One more time. That looks good. Let's just put it at the top, just to have it look better. So just zoop. Line it up as best as you can. One thing as well, just make sure you can't generate overlap events. And let's just make it no collision, just so it doesn't collide with the player at all. And now let's play it. And that looks good. Obviously there's no functionality or anything. We're not seeing much. So let's go ahead and add that functionality now. Let's go into our BP spinning saw underscore vertical blueprint. Let's go into our event graph. Let's go ahead and create some new variables here. One's going to be number of hits. Obviously this is again going to be an integer, defaulted at 0. And then for health, we're going to do hazard health. This is going to be a float. We'll make it 1.0. And now let's go ahead and add this functionality here. Let's make these variables public too, just to play it safe, if you know what I mean. Let's go ahead, because now we gotta reference the HUD that we just made for this hazard. So we're gonna need that hazard HUD we just put in. And there's a node here. It's called get user widget object. So it gets our widget, and we just need to cast it real quick. And now at this point, this references that HUD. So, before we do anything with that, right now we're working with the overlap. Whenever we touch it, it says hit character. That's when we're going to add number of hits by 1. So let's grab number of hits and do a plus, and then we'll do a +1. And then we're going to set number of hits to that value. Oops. There we go. Now that we have that number, what we can do now is grab from our cast to the HUD there, set it reroute node just for organizational purposes, and now we can do set number of hits within that HUD, and we can set that to the number of hits that we just created. So this should work. So let's go ahead and test it out. So if we run into this, we should get a 1. And we do. And as you can see, because we do the get user widget object, it doesn't affect the other hazard over there. They're both independent. They can both work on their own. And the same thing goes for the health when we do that. Sometimes there's problems with like overlaps and everything like that. So what we may need to do, just to clean it up a little bit, let's grab the flipbook. The spinning saw collision. Let's do on component end overlap. Let's just get that there. We're going to disconnect this one right here. We're going to grab a do once. And then with the end overlap, that's when we're going to reset that do once. So now we shouldn't see that. It's not weird collision, just the fact that it's overlapping multiple times. So we could just jump into it. And it doesn't blow everything out of proportion now. It makes sense that it's hitting. Now let's do the same thing for the health. We have our hazard health. Every time it gets hit, let's go ahead and subtract from it. For now, we'll do 175 just for a number. And then we can set the hazard health like that. And then we got to do the same thing with the HUD. So let's pull from this reroute, create one more reroute node. And then we'll do set health. And then just plug that up. Hit compile, save. And now we're seeing it's losing its health with each hit. Honestly, nothing happens when it runs out of health. But what we can do is have a check for the player health here. So let's disconnect. Let's grab player health. Let's check to see if it's less than or equal to 0. And then let's create a branch. Connect that up. Plug that in. So now, if it is less than or equal to 0, we don't want this to fire anymore. It's only when it's not less than or equal to 0 that we want to continue. So let's plug in the false. Make things a little organized here. Perfect. Compile. Now, let's just run into it a bunch of times. Get it to have no health no more. Should take 6, and there we go. And now if we hit it again, now it's not going to fire. It's done. And then we can. But it looks like it. No, never mind. It looked like it carried over to this one. I was wrong. But that seems to be working too. Just for, I guess, funsies, let's go ahead. Let's add an impulse to the character. So let's grab. Let's go to. There's event begin play. Before we start in the event begin play, before we actually start playing the animation, let's go ahead and get our character here. So right click and do get player character. And then cast that. And ours is the 2D side scroller character. That name may change depending on how you named your character, if you're using your own information. Plug that up. And then from the actor output here, we can now promote to a variable. And we'll just call this character reference. And then we can just plug that back up. What we're going to end up doing here, I just want to have the player get launched like it's getting pushed back a little bit. So let's get a character reference, and then from here we can actually do launch character, I believe, if I spell it right. Launch character. And then let's break this struct here just so we have each one independently. And what I want to have it do, I want it to launch the player. Let's just throw some numbers in, like 50. But we want to have him launch in the X as well. But we want to make sure he gets launched backwards, not forwards or any other way. So let's grab our character reference. Let's get his velocity. Obviously, we're going to need to break this, so let's split it. Let's take the return value. We're going to need to multiply it by -1, just so we get the opposite direction. And then from there, let's just add another number. Let's add 50 and put that into the launch X. And then let's just take return Y and just put that into the Y, just so the Y doesn't change. Now we should get launched. I'm not too sure how drastic it's going to be with those numbers, so we'll have to look. Something might be going on here. Let's change the collision on this saw. Let's do 70. No, 75. And then 75 as well. So we're changing the X and Y to 75 to 75. Let's make sure I want to make sure we collide. Not really doing much. I think one of the issues could potentially be the fact that I believe we changed in the construction script of our character we made his new location 0. So let's just make sure in our construction script, let's make our flipbook at 0. That way they have the chances of colliding with each other. Let's see. No? Let's try one other thing. Let's go into the viewport. Let's change its Y to 5. Just make it a little thicker. Let's see if it'll apply to it now. No? Let's type in show collision. Collision's kind of wonky, but let's go ahead and let's change these numbers. Let's make them ridiculous. We'll do 200 and 200. I just want to see it work properly. That needs to be an even bigger number. All right, let's try 1,000. YOLO. Too much. Let's try 500. That works. Still confused on why this doesn't, like the collision seems a little weird on this one. Oh well. We see that it's working now with at least the UMG portion of it. Let's just make sure there's no collision on that. No collision on that. Let's just do overlap all on that. What if I mean just like super wide? Would that prove anything to me? Who knows? Yeah. So let's just keep it like that. Now when we run into it, there you go. I think it's because of the do once. Yeah. Now that we got it to launch the character, we may not need the do once anymore. So let's try it again. 'Cause, 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 I unplugged the wrong one. No, I didn't. Let's try this. Yeah, it looks like it's working now. So it looked like it was the due ones. These saws don't like us because it's pushing us back. So last thing we're going to do is just tweak some of these numbers just for funsies. So I'll just change this to 250. Change this to like 400. That should work for us. Don't want to go into too much into that. It's not too important. But we can walk into it and it knocks us just a little bit. It just teaches us a lesson. But we got that working, so that's where I'm going to end the video for this one. The next thing we're going to do is set it up so that once you actually kill the hazard, it's going to switch the sprite material so that it's bloody, and we're also going to change the opacity on that just so you know you can't really use that anymore. So it's going to be a shorter video, but that's what we're going to do next. But for now, I want to say thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and you haven't already subscribed, please click on me or the subscribe button above to subscribe to the Devin Level Design channel. On the right is more videos on blueprint tutorials and other videos on my channel you can check out. And also in the description you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good social media stuff. And if you haven't, please like the video, comment, share, do all that good stuff just to get all the content out there, get it to as many people as we can. But again, I want to thank you guys. I also want to thank Devin Lopez because he's the one I'm working with to make this project. And just again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.